Justin Howell is Senior Director of Engineering at CBRE, where he helps shape global standards and supports teams across the Americas. He's a certified reliability leader with a strong engineering background and a Navy veteran who once led a 26-person team through 450 hours of incident-free submarine operations on a mission critical to national security. Justin brings a steady hand and a sharp mind to everything from change management to long-term reliability strategy. Ryan Thomas is Senior Director of Global Engineering at CBRE, with a career rooted in hands-on reliability, energy management, and leadership across life sciences, financial services, and industrial operations. He's a certified reliability leader with degrees in mechanical and biomedical engineering, and once led predictive maintenance programs across more than 20 sites in North and Latin America, driving energy savings and boosting uptime. Together with CBRE, Justin and Ryan are active members of the Reliability Leadership Institute, where they lean on practical training tools to help their teams turn reliability theory into real-world performance. Justin, Ryan, welcome to the stand.
Justin, Ryan, welcome to the stand. Great to have you guys as guests.
Great to be here.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
So CBRE, wow. I mean, I can't walk by a building in any major city without your signs being on it. You guys are working big. So I can't even imagine how you can scale reliability and get people to think and adopt your improvement programs in a scale like that. Can you tell me a little bit about where you're at, and then we can kind of go into how are you getting people on board this effort?
When I started my journey with CBRE and with reliability, I remember my first account, right? And I came in as a reliability engineer, and we were focused on uptime. We're also focused on cost savings. I had a little experience coming out of the Navy with reliability, but new in the role. And I remember coming in and doing this assessment around cost savings for air handlers as the specific one, right? And I knew, like after this analysis and talking with the team and working with all of our organization, there's a more efficient way for us to do air handler unit filter replacement. I was really excited, spent all this time working with the team, putting this program together, talking with the leadership for buy-in for it, selling it to the client, and felt really good about it and put it as a win, right? Said, I've done something here. I gave it to the team, and they took it to the technical team to actually implement it. They started coming back and saying, well, what about this item over here? Have you thought about that? It doesn't really work this way. What about this thing over here? It's still not working. My initial thought early on, and hard to admit this, was, guys, I've already moved on to my next item. I did 90% of the work here. Can't you guys carry this the additional 10% across the finish line? Like, I got you so close. And I've realized through my time here, I was so far off base. I might have gotten them to 50% of a solution, maybe. And instead, what I ended up giving them wasn't a program that they could implement, that they could adopt, that they could run with. I gave them a problem. I gave them a problem that they then had to figure out. And so I think since then, personally, there's a company in the roles that we're in, we've had a heavy focus around when we put something out there to our teams, that it's in a way that they can actually use, implement, they can actually adopt it. And it is a challenge. It's one that we focus on every day.
Yeah, but the fact that you're even aware of it, I think many people listening are going to recognize themselves in the story that you just told. So that's a very powerful story.
Thanks.
I think it really comes down to the adoption and implementation. There's very specific characteristics of each of those phases. We talk about executive sponsorship from the top down, but if you don't have the site level buy-in, the operations, voice being carried through you to echo that from the bottom upwards, it's hard to roll things out at scale. Because if you go to your executive leadership, have a proposal in place, but you don't have the initial buy-in from the site and they're resistant, that's going to put you in a bad position. And so we've done a lot around building processes and technical guidance, competency-based learning, and visual trainings and videos to help guide the teams when we're rolling out, a lot of these initiatives at scale, globally, across multiple sectors, all have their different nuances and challenges, but, I think that's really where it starts. You've mentioned, a couple times over the last few days, the Plan, Do, Control, Act, right? And control, that is such an important piece, kind of echoing on, what you had mentioned of, getting them 80, 90% of the way there, and then being able to control that, last variable 10, 20% of the way, to be able to leave a legacy.
That's great. Well, the scale is so large, and I'm like you. I'm so excited about reliability. I can't imagine somebody not adopting. And then all of a sudden, reality sets in, and not everybody wakes up. And it's not. I don't think it's because they don't want reliability. I think it's because it doesn't occur to them.
I mean, everybody wakes up every day wanting to do a good job, right? Like nobody is coming in to the office, to their role, not wanting to do a good job, right? And so how do we empower that group to do it, right? A portion of it is giving the tools, right? So through RLI and the membership that we have and the access to the workshops, right? We sent over 100 people this year through the CRL and CMM virtual workshops, right? Next year, we're going to expand into the Train the Trainer program. And so you start giving people the tools, right? And building upon what they actually have. And then you give them the space to do it, right? I think all of us, if you're overloaded with a tactical activity that you have to do, and I just have to get this job done so I can then go to the next job and the next job, you can't focus on reliability. You can't focus on long term. And so give the team the tools, make it easy for them, then give them the space so that they can actually accomplish that. And that's the journey that we're on.
So they can come into reliability. They can choose to walk into reliability.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Is it a technical barrier that you're finding there? Is it a cultural barrier? Is it a
one of my favorite quotes from this week, one of the presentations, was culture drives reliability. And reliability has inertia. And we've getting the ball rolling. We're building, a technical team, and we've got expertise all over the world. And we're trying to give those folks platforms and opportunities to level up and make connections. And you don't have to solve every single problem yourself. When you're as big of a company as we are, integrated with Reliability Web, we've got tools and teams, but the process to roll this out at scale is what really makes or breaks the success of it.
And I think what you said, Justin, is that no one wakes up to do a bad job. Do you think that people might be resistant?
I'm not sure I would say resistant, but they're hesitant, right? I think that's just as powerful, just as important, because what it does is you get too much of an inertia, you start skipping steps, right? We cannot jump to the end of reliability. You have to take it step by step, as was been talked about throughout the conference this week. The individuals that do have that hesitancy, that do question, is this the right path? Is this the right way? Is it going to work for me in my scenario? What they do is they allow us to open our eyes further to some of the challenges we might not have thought about, and therefore, what we create at the end is a real sustainable program. Because if you force it, it's not going to work the way that you try to force it. It's going to die as soon as you step away from it, right? And that sustainable program is really what we're looking for.
And are you finding that I know your where you apply reliability is very wide. You have life science facilities, you have high-rise buildings, you have data centers. Is there have you been able to harmonize sort of an approach overall, a philosophy, an approach, a standardize a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, one of the things we've been talking about is, a lot of the same problems, are happening across the board. And a lot of the activities, when you look at it, we try to standardize, somewhere in the range of 50, 60% of the same exact type of reliability initiatives, PM optimization, moving to condition-based maintenance, enabling reliability KPIs. And then that 30% is, a little bit nuanced. In life sciences, we got quality, compliance, FDA regulations, and all sorts of different environments. Sometimes we got a big hospitality presence of the white glove service, and and there's all different considerations across all the sectors within CBRE. And kind of back to your original point, how do we get everyone on the same page and speaking the same language? The opportunities you guys have helped create for us has been spectacular, and educating the teams and about what we can do for them is going to help with that resistance of change. And I've had chief engineers come up to me and literally shaking my hand saying, hey, what we're doing with implementing this technology, it's going to save me 4 or 5 hours on weekends where I could be home with my daughter. And and that's what hits home to me the most.
So then you're hitting the why, why, what's in it for them.
Yeah.
What do you think the opportunities with the new kind of technology? You're seeing a lot of IoT, Internet of Things here, AI. It seems like technology is asserting itself in front of us as an opportunity, but it certainly must be a challenge too.
It is, because it opens everyone's eyes to data quality, right? And if you don't have, we've talked about it, if you don't have good data coming in, you don't have good data coming out, you don't have good analysis from the AI portion. And so it is extremely powerful, right? I'm excited for the time period where we have just this extremely rigorous amount of data that can be analyzed for things like true total cost of ownership down to an asset level. And we talked about this, designing for reliability, and you'll be able to see the full life cycle picture that you have in order to support those decisions at the time of design. It's absolutely an important journey, and we're excited to be on it and to use the technology. We have to make sure that we have good data quality standards and controls around that before really heavily moving into that space.
Yeah. And as you can imagine, we've got maturity levels all over the board. We onboard new clients, transition sites, we have to be able to meet you where you're at on your journey. And, I think that's a major piece of how we're able to be flexible and efficient with, being on the same page and wavelength for, everyone getting on the same page.
Flashback 10 years ago when you were first starting or so, do you have any advice for the listeners here that aren't as far down the road as you all are? How would they, sometimes what they feel is that it's such a mountain. They are hesitant to even begin the climb because they don't think they're going to make it to the top of the mountain.
I think about, 2017 was when I started my journey with RLI. And, I remember speaking with a team. We had about 10 or 15 people in the room, all went through the Certified Reliability Leader workshop, took the exam, and, just getting started opened my eyes to things I really, didn't know how to connect the dots to previously. So, engineering and reliability focused. And when you think about things like human capital management and executive sponsorship, those were the things that really helped elevate me to the next level.
Excellent.
So thank you for
Oh, please,
That's the piece I would add again is don't try to skip to the end. It is one step after another, right? Like you come to a conference like this and there's so much energy, there's so much excitement, there's so much momentum, and you see all of these possibilities. And if you take all of these possibilities and you go in and you say, I'm gonna do this one, and I'm gonna get it out there to the team, and it's gonna be great, and I'm gonna celebrate, and I'm gonna move to the next one, I'm gonna keep doing that, and you forget that change management piece, you forget that implementation and adoption, you forget that sustainable program, again, you're gonna come back next year after you've done one of or more of these items and see you didn't actually create a change. It's not being used. And so that's what I would say is it is a journey, it's continuing. Be happy to be on that journey, and any improvement is an improvement, and you can't jump to the end, and you don't want to try to jump to the end.
I think that's really valuable advice. Really appreciate an opportunity. You guys have, such a big scale that you've got to deal with, but yep, you've done it that way. You would almost think, no, I can't do something this big one step at a time, but I think you're right. That may be the only way you can do it is one step at a time. So your lessons are very sage. We really appreciate you. You're terrific reliability leaders. You're really great examples in the reliability leadership community. So we're really proud to have you, and we're really glad to have this conversation. Hopefully maybe next year or year after, we'll get you back on the stand and see where you're at then.
Sounds great.
Sounds like a plan.
Thank you so much.